So in addition to the when, Andrea, how about the where? As you think about this, I know there are a handful of states where, because there's no state tax, there are positives to getting having residency in it. Does it make a difference in terms of a liquidity event, which state you are a resident of?
So there's a couple ways this comes up in the planning that I do, right? One is just where you are, domiciled as a taxpayer, right? My clients are California taxpayers, very disadvantageous from a tax perspective. And so there's not a whole lot you can do to stop that. There are people who expatriate out of California to Nevada, Florida, Texas for income tax purpose. And that's kind of that's really moving your whole life. And we can talk more about that. But, and then from my perspective, it comes down to, again, these trusts planning. So for example, I have a lot of clients who want to create irrevocable trusts, for the purposes of increasing their exemption for qualified small business stock sales, QSBS planning. And they have a certain amount, $10 million of exemption, and they want to stack or increase their exemption by creating irrevocable trusts for family members or friends. They'll often create those trusts in Nevada so that because there's no QSBS exemption for state law purposes, it's just a federal law. So they say, well, I'm going to use my QSBS exemption. I'm going to create more exemption. And then let's situs or place this trust so that the trust has a domicile for tax purposes in Nevada. And that way there's zero tax on this transaction. So there's rules and there's complications that arise when you do that, but it's very common for people to establish trusts in other jurisdictions for tax purposes and mainly for tax purposes.
I'm wondering about so you mentioned Nevada as a state to do that in, right? Are there any other, I feel like there's, other than Vegas, which has a lot going on, do you need to go back to that state like once a year or whatever your state you're going in, you're domiciling your trust in, or are there any other like odd requirements?
So when your trust is if you're going to have a trust that has a situs, we call it a situs, or that's in another jurisdiction, the requirement is that the trustee of the trust be in that jurisdiction. That's what creates the trust domicile. Is where does the trustee, I think is the manager of the trust, the CEO, the president of the trust document. So they have to be physically located in that state. And so that can be done either there's trust companies, right? So this is a big industry in South Dakota. There's a ton of trust companies, probably Delaware. Nevada has a ton. Alaska, where there's, it's just sort of like on an international level, like you might think of with the Cook Islands or the Caymans or something, right? So there's all these trust companies, or if you have a friend or, somebody who can do the work in another state, you can do that, but they have to be there. The client themselves never has to go there. And it's important to note that at least with California, how California taxes trust plays into it, right? So I can't speak for if you're a Massachusetts resident and you have a trust in Nevada. I don't know what Massachusetts does with that, but for California, of course, California is still going to tax any income that's California source income, right? So if you have a business in California, California is still going to tax that. It doesn't matter where the trust is. That's number one. And then, who the beneficiaries are may cause taxation as well. So if you have California beneficiaries, depending on how the trust is drafted and depending on how the distributions come out, there's probably going to be some California tax as well. So it's pretty complicated.
Yeah. The South Dakota surprises me. I wonder how they decided on that one.
Well, I mean, it's not that surprising if you think about there's, if you again zoom it out to sort of the Cayman Islands or the Cook Islands, right? You have these kind of international tax havens, right? And why did they do that? Is it because they really hate taxes? No, they don't have other industries, right? I think the Cayman Islands' biggest industry was rope at one point, maybe turtle meat, right? And so they need something to bring in some dollars so they can attract, Switzerland, probably the same thing. So South Dakota, I don't know what their big industries are, but, I imagine that's, it's not a very populous state. So they make, I'm sure Delaware's the same thing. You make great corporate tax laws, and then everybody wants to incorporate there. So
Mhm.
can I say-
Panama too, I think.
What's that?
Panama too.
Yeah, exactly.